Okay, so I'll aim for this to be as short as possible, but it might run on for quite a while. Hello, my name's Joe, and welcome to my channel, Not So Average Joe. I'm going to now do a reaction. Not a reaction, I lie. I'm too used to saying that. It's a bit annoying now. I'm going to do a review. I'm doing a film review, a spoiler film review for the film Us. So if you're interested in non-spoiler reviews, stop watching here and you can go straight to my Instagram account where I have a non-spoiler review there. It's quite vague, but it has to be for this film if you want no spoilers. So get straight into this review. What did I think of the film Us? I absolutely loved it. I mean, I'll start from the beginning, to be honest with you. So it started off really well. I mean, the open credit scene was incredible. I thought that just that slow moving camera just going back for 2.5, 3 minutes with that haunting Latin sounding song, although the director said that, sorry, the man who wrote and directed the score, he said that it's just lots of made up words, made up messages and gobbledygook, but it sounds Latin and it's really creepy and eerie and haunting. Haunting's the correct word for that. And it works so well, and obviously the theming of the rabbits in the cages, it looks like an experimental lab, which it is, so it does actually give you a vision of what the rabbits there will be used for, and that works later on with the cloning storyline. So right at the beginning, the first thing we see are the credits. Before the credits are just some words come up on the screen about how there's loads of abandoned tunnels and subway stations below the ground all across the US, and no one really knows what's under them, what's inside them, and are they being used for something secret? Are they just abandoned tunnels? Or, you know, we don't know anything about them. Some of them we do. So it's interesting that they said it's across the whole of the US. A lot of people miss this bit, but what that represents is that there's, you know, possibly a government cloning program going on throughout the whole of the US underneath all these tunnels, which is how there managed to be so many duplicates, so many doppelgangers under the ground. After that, we see on the TV screen, you've got, you know, with a few 80s DVDs and 90s, sort of, sorry, not DVDs, no DVDs in the 80s, but video cassettes and stuff like that of various different 80s films, etc. And you have a TV which shows an advert for the, I was going to say Make America Great movement. Let's not get into that right now, definitely not. Into the Hands Across America movement. So it's like the symbol, the logo is like a US map, so to speak, with various silhouettes of people with their hands all holding, and it's like red, almost like cut out paper characters, you know, like a snowflake almost, but with just like loads of people. I don't know what that's called. I don't know what to call it now. It was in the film as well. You know exactly what I'm talking about if you've seen it. And that's a nice little nugget of information there for what's going to happen later on in the film. Also worth noting, it was the last thing that Adelaide saw. And the last thing that Adelaide saw, other than the fact it was on her t-shirt as well, was, you know, watching the TV before she went to the beach. She sees that advert, and that's where she gets her idea at the end to make the statement to the people that they exist. We are here and we're here to stay. And she's under the ground. She doesn't have TV down there. What other plans could she come up with? Her whole life she's seen the Hand Across America movement. She's going to use that as, you know, part of her main plan. You know, she doesn't need to come up with any ideas. It's there in front of her. It's quite an effective way of getting some media coverage, as we see at the end with all the helicopters. It clearly was. What's also interesting, after we see that TV scene, we get to see the scenes that go straight to Santa Cruz, and you're at the fairground, and the fairground has, you know, the roller coaster, and the next scenes are equally beautiful to look at. I mean, cinematography and the music was great as well. We see Adelaide, the original Adelaide, and she's gone straight to Santa Cruz in the evening when it's dark, and she's with her parents, and they're at a fairground, and she wins a t-shirt. Well, she could have won something else. She chose to win the Thriller t-shirt, which her dad gave her, and her mum quips about, you know, it's scaring her, why you let her have it, etc. Bit of dialogue there, not from Adelaide though. She doesn't talk at all, which is really interesting for, you know, her set up for the rest of the film. But she's not talking at all through this. She's just looking around. Seems like she's in a little bit of a mood, a little bit of a grumpy mood. But anyway, her dad wants to play the whack-a-mole game. She stands there, her mum goes to the toilet, but then she sees something, she noticed something, and she decides she's going to walk off. towards the beach. So she goes past this man holding the placard of 11 with Jeremiah 11:11 on it, and she walks past this other couple doing like rock paper scissors down the staircase onto the beach. There's a storm coming. She then turns around and she sees the Hall of Mirrors, and she walks towards that, dropping her. I love the shot of when she just dropped her toffee apple that she was holding into the sand as it starts to rain on it. And as soon as she gets inside, it starts to pour down. She walks through, gets a little scare off a electronic owl that comes out. In effect, this is still a ride, for kids. It's a Hall of Mirrors, apparently. She runs towards what she sees as an exit, which is really interesting again because she hits a mirror. However, exit is spelt the right way round. So it means that if that's a mirror, then the exit is in reverse when it's not in the mirror, because it's really weird. But you look at all the other mirrors and all the other exits are the wrong way around. That exit is the right way round. And it could just be another way of the Hall of Mirrors to confuse people. But at the same time, it might, it's got something to do with the government maybe trying to keep people as far away from the doppelgangers as possible. But at the same time, it seems to trap her in there. So I'm not exactly sure what the logic is there. Either way, it's spooky. And then she backs off towards her doppelganger, who's just standing there with the back turned to her. It seems like it's a mirror. She's walked into a mirror, but it's not. We find out later that there's a doorway there that she's come through. Her doppelganger is called Red. And then all we see is just her go wide-eyed, and that's it. I like the constant flashbacks. It gives you that, little itsy-bitsy bits of information that help you to understand what happened to her on that fateful night. And yeah, like I said, that opening credit scene, beautiful music-wise, and with the cinematography, it gets you so hyped. It's beautiful. And I love films that still use open credit sequences, because I don't like just seeing the credits at the end. With a lot of older films are at the beginning, and I quite like that. I like that in a film. A lot more independent films are starting to do that as well. We go into later on into the film. Lupita Nyong'o's character Adelaide is grown up, and she's gone to a holiday home with the kids, which is near Santa Cruz Beach, and she doesn't really want to go there, but her husband convinces her to go back to the beach. It's clear that in another flashback that she stopped talking, and we don't know why she stopped talking. It was obviously after this fateful night, and her parents have gone to therapy with her, and they're trying to get her to talk again. They don't know what's gone wrong and what has happened, but the therapist tells them that, to try and get her talking again, trying to get their life back to normal by getting her to draw or to dance or to write. They chose the middle option there. They chose to get her to dance, and maybe dancing will help her to start speaking again. I'm not going to go all the way through the plot all the way to the end, so I'm going to stop right there for a second. Obviously, what's interesting, from that point, you should be able to, and like I said, if you're worried about spoilers, you shouldn't be looking at this review anyway. But what's really interesting is that from that scene alone, you can already guess that, well, you can't already guess straight away, but you could probably have guessed that they swapped, that the mirror version of Adelaide, Red, her doppelganger, had swapped with her. There's no way of telling for certain, but we'll know later on, where we find out that she seems to be the only one that can talk. All of the other doppelgangers can't talk, they just make noises. She is the only one that could talk, and the reason for that is obviously because she used to talk. She came from above the ground, so she's always been able to talk. Her croaky, crackly voice, where she could barely speak, might be as a result of her throat being grabbed by her doppelganger, and that's why her speech, the crush the windpipe or whatever, that's why her speech is not that great. Either that, or she hasn't spoken in so long being underground that she's sort of almost forgotten how to speak, and she's starting to speak again. Either way. But she's not speaking in the car journey home, she's not speaking at the therapy session, and it's because she's never spoken before. Red has never spoken before. She swapped with Adelaide, and because it's not the fact that she needs to be, her parents need to start her speaking again. She's never spoken before. She has to learn to speak for the first time using dance, whereas Adelaide under the ground, through dance, learns to take control of her own soul again, and maybe to learn to speak again. So it's like a mirror image is happening both above the ground and below the ground, which is, there's a lot of emphasis on that throughout this film. The doppelgangers do continually copy what the other what the people above the ground are doing. Not necessarily copy, however. Red, who happens to be the real Adelaide under the ground, states to Adelaide, who happens to be the real Red, hope you can keep up with this, she states to her that, you know, they were clones. They were part of a government program. The government cloned their bodies. And the whole reason for this cloning process was to create some doppelgangers to be able to control the people above. However, they failed in their mission. And I think what she meant by that is that they failed in terms of not being able to clone the entire package. They managed to clone the bodies, but they couldn't clone the soul. So although they could clone the bodies and you have two separate people, they couldn't clone the soul. So because they were sharing a soul, the people below were effectively controlled by people above. It worked the opposite. And the people below, under the ground, are effectively slaves. They're slaves to their own soul, and with the people above controlling that soul. So there's a lot of hidden messages of slavery and privilege and social and political and economical sort of elements to it. There's so much to think about in terms of the messages that it tries to portray, various scenes try to portray. So under the ground, they're slaves. That's why, you know, they're bound, they're tethered, as they like to say. They're tethered to the souls of the people above. So in order to break free of these chains, to break free of these tethers, they need to go through their untethering process and end the lives of the original subjects above. And by killing them, they are now free. Their soul doesn't belong to two people; it now belongs to one, and just them solely. So the doppelgangers want to take control of their life, take control of their soul. Once they've got that, then they can display their message for the people above the ground, the rest of the people that survived above the ground, that they're here to stay and that this is them and that they exist. That they exist is the most important thing. And there's a lot of people, you know, in real life situations that are poor, that are underprivileged, that are struggling in life, that feel like they're being ignored by the political establishment and in social circles and by the public as a whole. And those people that are being ground into the dirt, basically, they want to be seen. You know, a homeless person, a lot of people might ignore them, but they want to be seen. They want people to care. They want people to know about them. And I see a lot of messages regarding that, you know, in a lot of these scenes in this film, and it's really interesting. So under the ground, you know, they'll copy whatever the people above are doing. They'll ride a roller coaster, but actually just be standing in a room. And Red stated herself, the original Adelaide stated herself, that, you know, the government abandoning them because the project failed had sent them all mad. But I don't think it sent them mad necessarily. Obviously, generations through generations, they're going to be a little bit unhinged to a degree. They're not going to be reacting normally, I would say. However, I wouldn't say they're exactly crazy. I would say that they are forced to do the actions of the people above. Maybe that's what turned them mad, actually. The fact that they were forced to do the actions of the people above. And it makes them look crazy, you know, that... For example, when you have Elizabeth Moss's character Dahlia, and when she comes above the ground and she's putting on the lip gloss, and it's such a strange scene. She's putting on that lip gloss while staring into the mirror like she's never seen lip gloss before. It's because she never has seen lip gloss before. But she's so used to doing that action under the ground without anything in her hand. She does not know the experience of pleasure. She does not know the experience of, you know, getting what she wants. And when she finally gets that lip gloss, she finally gets to see what she was doing all this time. And so she's not crazy. She's not crazy at all. She's just doing what the other person was doing. So now she can be above the ground. She can be a normal person again. Obviously, it never ended that way, because people above would probably see her as crazy. She cuts herself because all she's known is pain, and cutting yourself on your face, that's synonymous with people that don't like the way they look and they don't like their body and they think they're ugly, or they want to make themselves ugly. You know, it's a mental illness in terms of cutting yourself like that, especially on your face, which is synonymous with how the public perceive the way you look. But the privileged version of her character, the original non-clone version, which is Kitty Tyler, she is privileged, and she only cares about beauty. She had that nip tuck done. She only cares about the way she looks, and she's putting on lip gloss every day, which is why, you know. So it's really interesting, a really interesting sort of mirror image almost of Dahlia's lack of love for herself, and she hates the way she looks, or she doesn't care that she's cutting her face, and you know, but you know, when you mirror that with Kitty's wants to be perfect all the time, looking great. Scenes of privilege, for example, you've got the black family, you know, led by Lupita Nyong'o and Winston Duke's characters, Adelaide and Adelaide and Gabe, and you've got the more privileged characters, which are the white family, who are also the more unhinged. You know, they tend to let each other get on with what they want to do. They're less of a family unit, so to speak. And that family is run by Elizabeth Moss and Tim Heidecker, who are known as Kitty and Josh. And what's really interesting is that the people above the ground are the privileged, and the people below the ground are the slaves. They're the downtrodden people, the people that have been literally and figuratively downtrodden under the ground. But there's a similar dynamic of privilege above the ground between different people above the ground. So you've got, like I said, the black family, who have a smaller boat. It's just bought a boat, a smaller boat than the white family. The car isn't as good as the white family. They both seem to be relatively well off, relatively rich families, but the white family's doing better. However, whereas Lupita Nyong'o's family, Adelaide, I keep calling him by the actor's name, but it doesn't matter, you know what I mean. Lupita Nyong'o's family are more close knit, and you see that especially in the car when they're singing and when they're going with the beat and clicking their fingers, you know. They love each other and they are a family unit, whereas the other family let each other get on with what they're doing. It's probably why they die so quickly as well. They die so quickly because they're less of a family unit, they're less close, they're less going to say, everyone quickly get out now, you know, arm yourselves, that sort of thing. Lupita Nyong'o's character Adelaide, I keep saying this, Adelaide, originally Red, she straight away gets her daughter to get her shoes on before anything even comes in the house. She knows what's coming and she is scared, so she wants to prepare for what might be about to happen, and that shows how much of a close-knit family unit they are. That monologue, oh my god, that monologue from Red, originally Adelaide, where she starts speaking in that croaky voice because of her voice box, that was amazing. You know, the princess and her shadow, and it was so interesting. And this is, you know, there's a lot of symbolism in there as well. You know, the shadow, which applies to Red and the princess, who's Adelaide. The princess got everything. The princess Adelaide got everything that the shadow Red should have got, because she had that all stolen from her, literally stolen from her when she swapped with her doppelganger. And it's all about, you know, you get given warm food, I have to eat rabbits raw and bloody. You at Christmas get cushy, cuddly toy presents, and I just get sharp objects that cut me. And, you know, you fall in love, but because the doppelgangers are attached to each other and their souls are intertwined, Red was forced to go with Abraham, effectively, and she didn't love him, but regardless, that was the way life was working and she couldn't do anything about it. She had a first child who was born laughing, whereas the princess's child was a beautiful little girl. And then you have the second child, you know, you had a cesarean and she had to perform the cesarean herself, and the child was born in the fire, I think she said, which is why I got burned face. I don't know how that exactly came about, but it's really interesting. It's such a beautiful monologue, and her acting, Lupita Nyong'o's acting in that scene was just perfect, phenomenal. The way just that lonely tear came out of her eye, she was eyes wide in horror at what she was saying. It was just incredible. She's clearly been through so much and seen so much that in effect it has turned her mad, and Red has gone mad because she was never down there in the first place. She must have gone mad to have to live through all these experiences. And you know, Zora's obviously a track runner above the ground, so below the ground, Zora, yeah, so below the ground, Umbre, who's Zora's doppelganger, was obviously also a runner, which is why she told her which is why Red told Zora to run, was because she knew Umbre could catch up to her and could kill her then. Obviously, that was interrupted by a man telling her to get off his car, and Zora could run off. That man died. Don't know if he's got a doppelganger. I'm not sure if every human being has a doppelganger. It was a government program that created doppelgangers, but I would say it's severely unlikely that every single person could have a doppelganger. I'm guessing it's a variety of experience, so maybe only half the population, and then the other half of the population are there to witness their effective demonstration, as to say that they exist, and then they have to all live in harmony. Possibly, it seems to have just ended in apocalypse, but we don't know for certain. And then you've got the child. You've got the child who's Jason, and Pluto is his doppelganger, and they go play together. Well, they seem to have a connection where Jason has. Well, what's really interesting actually about this is that Jason seems to be the only person, the only doppelganger, that actually still follows his copy above the ground. So they both still have the same soul, but so maybe that's a thing about childhood innocence. Children will still do what they're used to doing. They'll still follow a routine maybe more than adults will. And they'll still copy, and they're more likely to copy and be more sort of playful. Adults are more likely to go their own separate ways. They can live life as their own. Children are used to obeying orders and to following. So it's really interesting that I think Pluto was following his doppelganger because that's all he's been known to do. So when he does that with his hands, he does the same thing. When he takes his mask off, Pluto does the same thing. And that really wrote the fate for Pluto. So that's why when Jason walked backwards as Pluto was about to burn the family alive in the car, he raised up his arms, walked backwards, and in a mirror image of that, Jason also put his hands up and walked backwards into the fire where he was born. And again, I just love the way they've done these scenes and the symbolism in there. So Jason was born to the fire. Jason died to the fire. You have Umbre, who was born laughing. And funny enough, she also died laughing when she got hit by that car and when she got thrown off the car from the car braking. She was just laughing as she was dying. And Lupita Nyong'o's character, Red, who was known as Adelaide at that time, she was telling her to, shush, to calm, because she knew she wasn't a threat anymore. And I love the way the music in that scene as well, the Death of Umbre music, I think that's the actual name of the music piece itself on the score, from the soundtrack. I love the way the harrowing music just faded as Umbre herself faded. As Umbre died, the music died, and I thought that was masterfully done. That was amazing music, and the editing for the whole film was incredible as well. But in particular, in that scene under the ground with the flashbacks to her doing ballet dancing. So obviously, like I said, I'm not doing the plot in an exact order. You should know, if you've seen the film, what I'm talking about or what point I'm at. The masterpiece of a scene that was that ballet flashback scene. Really, I really felt that. I really, really did feel that. So basically, you have, obviously, above the ground, the real Red learned to dance, and she learned to dance, and that's how she learned to speak for the first time. Whereas under the ground, Adelaide, the original Adelaide, I'm not going to keep saying this, so you'll know what I'm saying if I just say one name, so let's say. So above the ground, Adelaide was taught to dance to get her to speak again. Below the ground, Red had to follow her with the ballet dancing as well. And that was at the point where the people below the ground realised that she was the one to lead them. They realised she was different, which is interesting. I don't know how they realised. I had a friend bring this up recently, but surely other people have danced below the ground because their doppelgangers above the ground have danced. Why would that make them believe she's different? I'm thinking that's because that's where Red found her voice again. She found her voice again through the dancing, as Adelaide above the ground found her voice for the first time while dancing. So that was, again, a mirror image. And because none of the others downstairs, down under the ground, can speak, she was seen as different and that she could lead them. And obviously, like I was saying before, she led them with the only sort of plan that she'd ever seen possible, which was the Hands Across America movement. It's interesting to know how they managed to untether themselves and get above the ground in the first place. I'm guessing they they strictly trained themselves to try to stop copying the people above the ground. You know, they share a soul, but at one point they need to take control. They equally share the soul, so in effect, because they managed to control the soul, and then go above the ground. To me, that leads me to believe that the experiment, after all, was not unsuccessful. It may have taken a few generations. All it took was some leadership, and it wasn't successful. They've managed to pretty much control the people above the ground, and I like that. I like that idea that the experiment in the end pretty much didn't fail. The government did what they set out to do. They just, at that point, the people below the ground were pretty much forgotten about. So a lot of people in the government at that time probably didn't even know about this, and so yeah, it would have been a shock to people, which is why so many people died. You know, they really planned and thought this out. What is also really interesting to me is that all of the doppelgangers. There's a couple of things that I have a couple of issues with. So the doppelgangers that are below the ground, they all came up and they managed to find all of their real life counterparts that easily. Like, all of them still lived in the same place they did from 20 years earlier, or from 30 years earlier. How is that even possible? I don't think it is possible, because some people will have moved hundreds of miles away. Some people might have moved abroad. Some people. So, I mean, it doesn't give into too much details there, but basically, I would say a majority of people in that Santa Cruz area that we could see died, because a majority of people would still be living in the same sort of areas that they grew up in. Many people will also have moved out, and maybe they're some of the survivors that, you know, we see in the end. You know, maybe one of them's flying the helicopter. So I'll say a majority of people still live there that probably grew up there, whereas some will have moved away. The ones that moved away are the lucky ones, possibly. I don't know. But then again, who's to say the doppelgangers also didn't move away? How long are these tunnels? You know, they might all be joined up from east to west coast, north to south. So they may also have moved with the doppelgangers. So at the same time, I also believe that not everyone would have a doppelganger created. But likewise, we've noticed from this film that they're not just killing their doppelgangers, they're also killing other people that come across their path and that block their way. I also thought that little news report as well, where they're all linking hands and they thought it was some sort of protests about something, was really interesting, because when one of the people in the red boiler suits, one of the doppelgangers, goes towards the camera, that in itself is sending a message. They know they're being filmed. They know they're on the news. They're going to come straight for it, kill the person with the camera. What bigger statement can you make? A lot, as well as just, you know, the Hands Across America movement. So a couple of little itsy bitsy issues that weren't really an issue for the film. I was wondering, okay, the escalator only goes down, so how would Red have made it up the escalator? But quite easily off screen, there could have been an up escalator. I mean, they just didn't show it in the film. They don't have to show everything in the film. You just got to use your imagination, have an imagination once in a while. She could easily have climbed up the side slope bit, but it would have been quite steep. Or she could have just gladiator travelated up the escalator, even though it's going down, which for a girl of her size, I don't think it's possible. She would have found it extremely difficult. The other thing is how Umbre below the ground seemed to have relaxed hair, but but her counterpart Zora above the ground has sort of natural hair, which is quite interesting, because where would someone below the ground in their position get, you know, hair relaxant? I'm not sure. That, you know, it's not a big issue, like I say. It's just a character choice. I think it, in terms of Umbre's look, the relaxed hair just makes her look even more psychopathic, especially at the point, especially when she's about to get hit by the car. You know, the way she's looking, the way she's smiling. I think the hair really works. The hair and makeup was done really well in this film as well, along with many other things. But that would have made more sense, much like with Adelaide's and Red's character. Red under the ground had her natural hair, whereas Adelaide above the ground didn't. She had like sort of braided hair. So that would make, you know, that one made sense, for instance. Another thing that was bugging me, I don't think Winston Duke's character Gabe worked as well as it could have. I thought some of the humour was a bit misplaced, I'll be honest. There were bits that worked really well, towards the beginning with the family interactions. There's always humor in family interactions, when they're in the car, when he does, the dab, and Zora's like, "Ew, don't do that. You're too old." These sorts of family interactions are funny. The bit where he got the speedboat, that's quite funny. He's so happy and impressed that he's got a speedboat, and then when he tells his more privileged white friend that he's got a new boat, it's like, "Oh well, mine's bigger, mine's better. I've got this," in a jokey fashion, but I see the symbolism there. However, later on, when it comes to the point where their home has been invaded, they could possibly be killed, the humour, I think, there didn't work as well, and it wasn't welcome in places. Um, the bit where the section after Lupita Nyong'o's Adelaide, no, sorry, Lupita Nyong'o's Red, sorry, made her monologue about the Princess and the Shadow, and he just said, "What you mean? Naturally, your reaction would be like, why do you all look like us? Just what do you want from us is enough by itself, or please don't hurt us," that sort of thing. But no, his natural reaction was, "You can have my wallet, you can have my boat." I Would you say that in real life to seeing your identical doppelgangers here to attack you? It's just, or you'd be too either speechless, or you would ask them for a flipping reasonable question. Although when Zora then said, "No one wants your boat," that was actually quite funny in that moment. So it served a purpose. At least those two lines served a purpose. And the Ophelia scene with Kitty and Josh and his family and his daughters, um, that worked really well. I thought that was great. And yeah, that worked really well. I mean, the bits where they were arguing and they weren't being a family unit, for example, when he said, "Play Good Vibrations" by the Beach Boys, and she was like, "Lower your voice," or stop. I forgot exactly what she said. "Keep the noise down, stop talking, slow down," whatever she said, for him to be quiet. But then it turned the music down, and then later on, where they all get attacked, and that scene was amazing. Her crawling across the floor, going towards her husband, but she still reaches up towards her doppelganger husband because she doesn't know what's happening, but he is also her husband. So she might think she's going crazy at that point. I was like, "No, my husband's there. He is going to help me." It's really interesting. And the way she says "stop," as in "stop, don't hurt me," and the music stops. So then she says, "Call the police." And much like Siri might do, or Google Voice, whatever. Let's say you got a Scottish accent or you got some form of accent, you might say something and it will think something different, like, "Show me the way to Trafalgar Square," and it will show you the way to Amarillo instead. And I think her gurgling would have affected how Ophelia, you know, how Ophelia sounded to the robot, which is not perfect, and that's why they played "Fuck the Police." And what I also got from that, again, was that, technology isn't perfect. These are direct to human clones that are identical, and they're both humans. And as Red said, we're Americans, because they are Americans. They're just as American as you. They are identical to you, and they are Americans like you are. But the hands across America, all she knows is, okay, we're Americans, probably even more than humans. We are all Americans. And she gets it all from that T-shirt that she was wearing. The red boiler suits and the scissors. I'm not sure where they got so many scissors from. Obviously they're doing a lot of experiments on these clones. Obviously the rabbits were there for cloning purposes and for experiments. I'm guessing they cloned the rabbits first, and then they moved on to humans, and they were using the rabbits for experimentation to actually come up with being able to clone people in the first place. And when the people were abandoned there, the clones were abandoned there, the rabbits were abandoned there, and the rabbits were the only food item they had. So they had to keep breeding the rabbits to be able to keep eating them. The scissors, I'm guessing there were loads of scissors and knives which are used for experiments and stuff like that, and they were all down there, although they just seem to all have scissors and all the same type of scissors. The red boiler suits, again, they could have been originally made to wear these. They could have just been in storage. It could have been all from the staff. The staff could have just left them all there. But again, how they managed to all have the same ones, or maybe they, I don't know, sewed all their red bed sheets that were on every single bed and turned them into the jumpsuits. That's always a possibility, something like that. it's really, there's lots of unanswered questions in it as well, but they are quite minor, and you don't really need to know the answer to enjoy the film or to really get the film. I like at the end. I mean, I actually predicted straight away. Well, I'll tell you when I predicted it, but I did predict that Lupita Nyong'o's character Adelaide was actually red, and when I got that from when she was taken by the doppelganger Tyler family and taken hostage and strapped to the bed. After Kitty was killed by Jason, well, Dahlia was killed by Jason, should I say? And when they were having their family interaction down below, when they first find out that actually it seems like multiple doppelgangers are coming and killing people, Elizabeth Moss's Elizabeth Moss's daughter's character is either Russell or Rain Thomas. I don't know which one it is, and Wayland or Eartha, which are their doppelgangers. When the one that was killed or smashed into the coffee table, when she came back to life, and when Adelaide had to kill her, when she did kill her, she started grunting and making these noises that all the other doppelgangers were making, and I straight away thought, why would you do that unless you're a doppelganger? I understand you're angry, but those were like visceral sort of grunts that almost came naturally as speech rather than something you would just react to after killing someone. You might be breathing heavily or something like that. And then it's repeated again when Adelaide kills her doppelganger, when she kills Red. And Red starts whistling Incy Wincy Spider, which was the tune they were both whistling when they were at the beginning in the Hall of Mirrors. And Adelaide kills Red, and then she starts screaming and making these weird, visceral, quite dirty, creepy grunts and noises that made it out like she was going completely crazy. I mean, she has shadows just going completely over her eyes, and she seemed to be seeing red, but at the same time it's just all these grunts and noises. And even when she heard the sound of the locker, it was like like that. She was just making these noises, and it's only when she opened the locker that she saw her son, and she was like, okay, she went to speak to him again to calm him down. I think that was at the point where he realized that where his mother was the original Red. So in the ambulance, when Adelaide had her flashback, and it was proven that she was in fact Red, who had swapped place with Adelaide, tying her to the bed, and had went into the upstairs world where she was found by her doppelganger's parents. And then Gabe is looking at her in a weird, funny way, quite creepy way, which reminded me a bit of The Omen, that final stare and smirk and smile from The Omen. He looked at his mum, and he already knew that she was Red. She was the other person. And he could see that. I think he probably saw that from the locker and heard the way she was acting, and that's when I think he realised. And then him putting his mask down, again, was symbolising Red's son Pluto, who kept the mask down the whole time as well. Sort of almost like he uses his mask as like a shield, as like a comfort from unfortunate or scary or weird situations. And I think that was probably something to do with that. But yeah, I mean, overall, I'm gonna sum it up now. Overall, I really enjoyed this film. I brought up the fact that all the doppelgangers at the point where they didn't control their soul, and they just let the people above control them, and just without thinking about it, they just got on with their lives, let them control them. For example, with the lip gloss with Kitty's character and Dahlia doing the action without the lip gloss, and then finally getting to use the lip gloss for the first time, wondering why she was doing it. You also had Winston Duke's character Gabriel and Abraham never knew why he was doing that with his eyes, and he realised when he saw Gabe's glasses that was the reason why he's doing that. So he took them off, decided to try the glasses, realised he could now see, and realised the privilege that the people above had over them, and realised that they were so much better off than them, and that it's all been taken away from them, and they want to take it back. And I think that's the biggest symbolism I saw, was slavery and privilege and white privilege. And they were the messages, the biggest messages I think I saw there, along with all of the others that there simply could be. I think the name of the first song in the soundtrack, the one that sounded very Latin and very haunting, is called Anthem. And if you put the name of the film, Us, next to that first song in the soundtrack, it says Us Anthem, which looks like a US anthem, and it is it's a political statement as well on the US. There's so many little bits in there that a lot of people aren't getting that I think are just really interesting to think about. Anyway, so yeah, overall, I thought it was just a really, really well made, really well directed film. I think Jordan Peele is just an absolute legend. I mean, he's amazing. He's quickly becoming one of the great directors of the last, I don't know, the last 30 years. So I would say probably one of the great directors of that time. And he's only into his second film. Get Out was just incredible. I loved Get Out and everything it's trying to portray. I still don't see that as a horror film. A lot of people see it as a horror film. It's more of a psychological thriller. Us is flat out a horror film. It's gory. There's horror elements in it, but at the same time, it's a thriller, and it's definitely a psychological film. But yeah, the writing is so well done. Like I said, some of the jokes though were a bit off-putting in places, but overall I think the writing's done really well. The music was phenomenal, and again, second time score from the man that only did Get Out before this, and he's come up with two whoppers of musical scores. And I think he went straight from musical teacher to doing this score for Get Out, and then now to doing Us. Incredible. He's got a great future ahead of him if he keeps this up. It's incredible. The use of mixing his original score as well with I Got Five on It, and the song I Got Five on It, which was featured heavily in the trailer as well as in this film. The mix of the two made the song so much more haunting and so much more effective in certain scenes, especially with the ballet scene that I was talking about at the end. And while I'm here as well, quickly, the ballet scene with the flashbacks and Adelaide attacking or trying to attack Red, but Red managed to get one over on her by dancing her way around her, was really interesting as well, because although Red herself mentions to Adelaide, you're the reason that I learned to dance, so I can thank you for that. So from what I can tell is that Adelaide, well, Red has always been different because she was Adelaide, she was above the ground, so she always probably act differently to everyone else. However, at the point where people started to realise how different she was when she learned to dance. So Adelaide learned to dance and she learned to speak for the first time. Red learned to dance and she probably learned to start speaking again. But I reckon that was when she first started to take control of the soul from the version of her above the ground. She probably continued to dance, which is why she was better and she managed to outwit Adelaide on most occasions there. She was just unfortunate at the end by stupidly just running at her, which she shouldn't have done. Because the reason why she managed to evade Adelaide, because Adelaide was attacking her and she had the upper hand there. She lost the upper hand was when she attacked Adelaide, and it's the other way around, and that was when she lost it. But Red probably continued to dance, so she continued to take control of her soul, and she wasn't copying what the people above were doing. And that's when the people down below, the doppelgangers, started to realise she's different from us. She can lead us because she's taking control of her own soul. She can help us all to take control of our own soul and to be able to go above the ground. So she really was the reason why all of them started managing to untether themselves. And I thought that was just really interesting as well. So visually stunning again, the camera work incredible, just incredible. The coloration, the colors they use as well, and the use of shadows, great. And the use of actual soundtrack songs as well. I Got Five on It was great. I think Minnie Riperton's Le Fleur was brilliantly added to the end, and I think it worked really well. It sort of adds to that sort of hippie feel of the Hands Across America movement, which was originally there to raise money for charities, but at the same time it had to be the choice of that song because that was the original song from the trailer for the Hands Across America movement, which you saw at the beginning of the film. So it's a good song to have in there. the use of Janelle Monáe's I Like That works so well in sort of the mood of, you know, that family trip in the car just arriving in sunny Santa Cruz. I thought that was really effective and that worked quite nicely. Yeah, so music overall and soundtrack, I don't think I can fault it. It's flawless in my opinion. And the acting, Lupita Nyong'o's acting was amazing. I thought the acting just works so well with her characters. In fact, the different characters were playing different characters. You know, they each had a doppelganger, so they had to be two different characters. Lupita Nyong'o was by far the best, but I thought Shahadi Wright Joseph, who played Zora, as well as Umbre, she was great in it as well. Very reserved as Umbre, but very creepy with her facial expressions. But she was actually, you know, genuinely good and she had very good quips when it came to jokes as well, with her character Zora. Pluto and Jason, played by Evan Alex, was really good. Particularly I thought as Pluto, you know, I think it actually takes more work to just grunt and pretend to be an animal, and that very animalistic way for Pluto to act and was very interesting. It was like a dog, like a lost puppy following its owner, which it links exactly to what I was saying before about, you know, the one tethered following the person above that has control of the soul. You know, much like a dog, he's tethered to the person like a lead. A lead is a type of tether. So I mean, all that symbolism there works well, and you know, everyone was great as Pluto, especially as Pluto, I think. And Elizabeth Moss, her facial acting was incredible. You know, the way her open mouth smile with the lip gloss, the way she looked out the window, and her silent scream. You could hear her breathing, but you couldn't hear her scream. It could either be because she can't scream, as a result of her, you know, lack of using her voice, but it could also just I'm not sure what it could be, but it's emphasising the fact that she doesn't talk, I think. And she's screaming at the sight of her husband dying, and then she starts laughing again, at the point where maybe she didn't love her husband as well. Bear in mind that, you know, the person above fell in love, she might not also have fell in love below to her husband. And also there wasn't a strong family dynamic to begin with, so, you know, the love isn't there as much as with, you know, Lupita Nyong'o's family. But it could also mean that she was screaming and crying because she thought her husband was dying, and then she thought her husband was winning and she started laughing again. I just think she's a crazy bitch. That was my opinion there. And the use of reflections, you know, the Hall of Mirrors reflection, the Pluto and Jason walking backwards and copying each other as, you know, hints at reflection and sort of opposites in terms of the symbolism, as well as, you know, you got the reflection in the window of Zora coming up behind. So yeah, I mean, there's lots of references at mirrors and doppelgangers and reflections. That's obviously going to happen in a film like this. And yeah, it's just an amazing film. It's just so well directed and acted, and everything was great about it, pretty much, apart from the odd few bits and bobs, like tiny little things. And like I said, some of the humour wasn't the best. It didn't work out as much, but it was still enjoyable to many people in the audience that also watched it. Anyway, I want to hear any information you have. Oh, one more thing. Another one of my friends brought up about the fact that how would the people below also be wearing like exactly the same clothes or very, very similar clothes? I mean, where the hell did they get these clothes from? I mean, I suppose they could make the clothes. It doesn't explicitly say that, you know, there's always going to be questions and answers. But I think, for example, you have the Thriller t-shirt, and the Down Under the Ground version of it was a Tatia t-shirt. That's a similar style, it's a similar length, but it has a different logo and that on it. How do people below know they're holding a t-shirt? Maybe if they're sharing a soul, they might also be sharing a mind to some degree, so they might also be seeing. The people below possibly are also seeing what the people above are seeing, and that could be another reason as to how they know what they're doing as such. And also possibly how Elizabeth Moss found the lip gloss and realised that was what she was meant to be putting on her lips, because maybe she's actually seeing it in the mirror. I don't know, that's just one theory. But yeah, like for example, Red was wearing, I think, a plain yellow t-shirt, and Adelaide was wearing a yellow t-shirt, the same style, same sort of shade of yellow, but hers had the logo of the Hands Across America movement on it. So maybe they've got, you know, if they're the same soul, they might have similar tastes as well. Maybe there were loads of clothes down there and they can wear similar looking clothes or find similar looking clothes but not wear the same. But these questions will never be answered fully, I don't think, so you can't really dwell on these things. Anyway, yes, thank you for watching. So any more theories you might have below, or any suggestions, or if you agree with me, let me know in the comments below, and you know, we can chat more about it. There's so much to talk about with this film. And yeah, thank you for watching. Make sure you join me back here for my Game of Thrones reaction, which will be on the 14th of April. It might be released on the 15th if I can't do it quick enough. It will definitely be on the 14th in the US. It'll be the 15th in the UK, 100%. And there'll be other reactions coming soon, maybe other reviews. So just let me know what you thought of the film. I'd like to know that as well. So yeah, make sure you come back and watch my next video. See you soon, unless my doppelganger starts coming, and then, well, I'll make a run for it. I'm not the best at running. I'm not like Zora or anything, but neither will they be, so I'll probably get away with it. See you later.